Drag queen celebrates Halloween with simulated abortion, cutting baby out of womb and drinking its blood. Here's the problem. Here's the problem, brothers and sisters. People want the results, they want the benefits of American society and culture, but they don't want the values that made it possible. They don't want the values that made it possible. Elizabeth Warren, amnesty for illegal aliens will pay for Medicare for all. Well, now we know your motivation, Elizabeth Warren. It's not to care for illegal aliens. It's not to provide humanitarian aid to people who live in different countries. It is to push forward your socialistic agenda. Another evil, contradictory thing to American values. And so what I wanted to say is when you read through the news, when you read through the mainstream news media, when you read through the news, and you see all the wickedness because it's reported at a cyclic rate now. It's reported at a cyclic rate now because news travels faster, right? News travels a lot faster, and because news travels so much faster, we have this free-flowing kind of web of constant information. You're going to read it, and you're going to get fed up with it. But just know, number one, there's nothing new under the sun. And number two, these people are on a collision course to shoot themselves in the foot. And the reason I say that is because there's something that accounts for the values. There's something that accounts for the values of, the values. There's something that accounts for the prosperity of this nation. There's something that accounts for the prosperity of this nation, and it is the values upon which this idea we call America was founded. And so when you take away the values, you take away the causes, the effects, right? If you take away the values, you take away the effects that they bring about. You take away the things, the pavement, so to speak, upon the road that leads to prosperity. You take all that away. Okay, but we live in a country, actually, full of people who want the benefits of America, but they don't want the values that made those benefits possible. Does that make sense? So I ask people all the time, I used to talk to people about this quite a bit. Do you like history? Do you like history? It's one of my favorite subjects. I love to talk about history. I love to study history. I love to read about history, mostly church history. But nevertheless, I like history. It's mostly a hobby horse, but it's also handy and profitable to study in terms of figuring out where we're going to go. It's a very good predictive tool. History is incredibly predictive, has incredible predictive power. So I ask people, do you like history? Do you enjoy studying history? Do you appreciate history? Do you respect history? All of that. The answer I get most of the time, especially those who are my generation and in the generation following mine, the answer I get most of the time is, no, I don't really like history. I can't get into it. Well, why is that? Why is that? I understand not having history as your hobby horse. I get that, okay? I get not having history as your hobby horse. And therefore, you don't have your nose in a history book all the time. But at least to use it as kind of a predictive mechanism to see where we're going to go, to see what mistakes people and societies made in the past in order to see the consequences of those mistakes. That's a very practical use of history. And the fact of the matter is I'm not a read for every millennial. I don't know the universal statistics on millennials in the United States, or the next generation X or Z or whatever in the world it is. I don't know those numbers. I would guess, however, that most of the time people who take university classes try to blaze their way through history. unless it's a very small, group of history nerd lovers, which would be me. Okay, so I'm not making fun of anyone. But that's a segment, right? People generally don't appreciate history anymore, and I think you can tell that just by the trajectory of our political situation, the kind of atmosphere of our churches or American evangelicalism, looking at things like that. People don't typically appreciate history as they should. They don't learn from history as they should. They don't care to learn from history as they should. And the truth of the matter is this, that if you don't like history, if you don't prefer history, if you hate looking at history, you're not going to look back at the values, right, that made this country what it is. You're not going to look back at the values. You're not going to study those values. You're not going to examine the reasons for those values. You're simply going to get by. You're going to forget about history. You're going to forget about the values. But you're still going to want the benefits, right? You're still going to want your freedom. You're still going to want your freedom of expression, your freedom of speech. You're going to want all these benefits. You're going to want to be able to take home a decent paycheck every week or every 2 weeks without giving half of it to the United States government, the federal government. You want all of those things. You want to be able to have the freedom to vote and things like that, or maybe not. But you don't want to be under a tyrant. You don't want to live in a tyrannical society. But you don't want to study and adopt any of the values that prevents those things from happening. You want all the benefits of America, but you don't want the values that made those benefits possible. And that's largely, I believe, what's happening. Drag queen celebrates Halloween with simulated abortion, cutting baby out of womb and drinking its blood. Fake baby, not a real baby. Praise the Lord. That person, however, is not qualified to be an American citizen. That person is abominably contradictory in their actions and thoughts to the founding values of this nation, to the founding principles of this nation. Elizabeth Warren, not qualified to be a politician, not qualified to lead this nation, not qualified to hold any public office. Why? Redistribution of wealth. Wants to bring in immigrants for a political agenda. It sounds a lot like ancient Rome. Rome fell. This is part of the reason Rome fell, by the way, is immigration. And the reason they wanted immigration, forced immigration in some cases, they would conquer nations, they would bring the people into their citizenship, and then they would enslave them. So it was beneficial. And that's what Warren's doing here. She's using illegal aliens as a political tool, just like Rome used slaves who were prior citizens of the nations that they conquered. They brought them in, and those slaves and immigrants refused to assimilate to the value system of Rome. They wanted all the benefits of Rome. They wanted all the benefits of the society and the culture, but they didn't want the values of Rome. And so you have a fracturing, right? You have a fracturing at the very lowest levels of society, a fracturing. And they produce children, and then they perpetuate the problem. The fractures get broader, wider, worse, deeper, whatever. And then that's one of the things that led to the economic collapse of Rome. And then obviously after the economic collapse, it was pretty much all downhill from there. Logistics, military, everything else came afterwards. So the only thing I wanted to point out here, and I don't want this video to be super long, the only thing I wanted to point out here is that these people shoot themselves in the foot. I don't think we have to look at these people and take them too seriously, because ultimately they're shooting themselves in the foot. They are putting a gun to their head. They're pulling the trigger is what they're doing. The unfortunate part about it is they're in our leadership, and so they're going to drag the rest of us through it. But idealistically, they're idiots. They're defeated. Logically, on a logical level, on a practical level, they're defeated. And obviously the Lord Jesus Christ is going to come back. He's going to glorify his people, and he's going to judge these people. I pray that before that happens, God saves a great many of them, draws a great many of them to himself, sovereignly, efficaciously. But the reality is that these people are shooting themselves in the foot. They're shooting America in the chest, and they are damning themselves for doing so. So don't get upset when you read these headlines. I mean, there is a righteous indignation to be had there. But ultimately, these people, what they're doing to themselves. This is self-inflicted damage. Simulated abortion, cutting baby out of womb and drinking its blood. Yeah, that's self-infliction. You are killing yourself. There's no self-interest there. They think there's self-interest there. That's the hilariousness in it all. They think that this is liberating type of a kind of liberating type of behavior. But guess what? It's not. It's not. It's going to end. The result of it is going to end for them badly. What's going to happen is, in perpetuating these kinds of anti-values, let's call them, they're going to ensure that the prosperous results of American values no longer continue at some point. Okay, so we don't have to get mad at these people. These people are sowing their own fate. Practically speaking, spiritually speaking, they are liable to judgment. They're under the wrath of God, being outside of Christ. Guys, I want to remind you that I am going to drop at least the first installment of. I'm going to drop the first installment of the Federal Vision Monday. So don't forget about that. I'm going to drop the first installment of the Federal Vision series I'm doing. It's going to be like 10 parts, guys. And research for it is going right now. I'm kind of researching as I go and create the outlines and the PowerPoints and things like that. So it's exciting. And my prayer, my hope is that, you know, it's well developed. My hope is that it's well done and that it's useful and edifying for you. So if this video was useful and edifying for you and you think it would be for others, I'd appreciate a share and a thumbs up. If not, I'd appreciate a thumbs down and then an explanation as to why. Guys, if you haven't subscribed already, please press the red button below, click the bell so that you can continue getting notifications of new content. Anyways, God bless you guys and have a wonderful rest of your evening.